Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. Normally Thursdays are for tournament previews, but Magic Online events are down. Hard. Plus we've got a sweet new standard deck to knowledge pull the crap out of. Green-white tokens is a thing. A really cool thing. While you may have seen token decks in the past, this one is a bit different. I only say that because the curve is much higher than traditional token-based strategies. A more suitable name for this deck may be something like ramp tokens, considering it seems the entire deck is based around playing gigantic tokens instead of the normal 1/1s we've come to know and love from Innistrad block. Our mana base is pretty simple. Two-color decks rarely have problems with mana fixing, and green-white is no different. 4 Temple Garden and 4 Selesnya Guildgate are accompanied by 9 forests and 7 plains to fill out the land base. Starting at the bottom of our curve, we have a playset of Elvish Mystic. Quickly becoming a staple in every single green deck, the Mystic provides excellent mana ramp in this fast-paced strategy. In the 2-drop slot, we start with a playset of Voice of Resurgence. This card is a no-brainer in a token deck. Voice is usually in any green-white strategy, as the value from it is insanely high. Since spot removal is going to be something this deck is weak against, Voice is great to keep the pressure on. The only other creature in the 2-mana slot is a pair of Vitu-Ghazi Guildmage. We haven't seen much of the shaman since she destroyed everyone in Return to Ravnica Limited, but she fits perfectly here. Her 4-mana populate ability is amazing, and if you can resolve her and untap, your opponent will be overwhelmed quickly. At 3 mana, we start with a playset of Loxodon Smiter. This card is just crazy good right now. The can't be countered clause is fantastic. The can't be discarded part is pretty strong as well, considering all the black devotion decks. Even if you take those things away, a 4/4 for 3 mana is just good. There isn't a reason not to play him. Sharing the 3-drop slot on the curve is a playset of Boon Satyr. Similar to the Smiter, the Satyr is just great value for the cost. Not only is he competitively costed in general as a 4/2 flash for 3, but his bestow ability allows you to make a legitimate threat out of anything on the board. In a token deck, it's all about applying pressure, and Boon Satyr does a pretty good job of that. A singleton Trostani Selesnya's Voice occupies the 4 slot. The populate ability is extremely cheap and perfect for this deck, but the real value in Trostani is the life gain. With Red Devotion running rampant, resolving a Trostani can shut the game down immediately. It's hard for a red deck to race the life gain of a populating token deck. Trostani is really strong in that matchup. Don't underestimate it. The last creature in the deck is a pair of Scion of Vitu-Ghazi. Gotta say, never thought I'd see this hit standard. 5 mana for a 4/4 isn't ideal, but getting a free 1/1 bird and populating isn't so bad. It's basically 3 creatures for 5 mana, so in the end you can't really be that upset. It makes perfect sense for this type of strategy. Considering the birds are evasive and carry a Boon Satyr well, it's a pretty ingenious inclusion. There are 15 non-creature spells in the deck, and they all have to do with tokens. We'll start with the playset of Advent of the Wurm. When this deck was first being made, I'm sure Advent was one of the first cards on the list. 4 mana for a 5/5 trampler that can be populated? Come on, this card is stupid good. The value's disgusting. On the same train of thought, 3 Call the Conclave have the same purpose, just at a lower cost. Watchwolf was good in its day, and this is just a Watchwolf you can populate. A 3/3 for 2 is just good value, especially with relevant interactions. It helps get solid threats down early and keep the pressure on. The rest of the spells are 4 Rootborn Defenses and 4 Selesnya Charm. These are both obvious additions to the deck. Rootborn Defenses is a great combat trick and perfect against the Ratchet Bombs and Supreme Verdicts of the world. The populate effect doesn't hurt either. Selesnya Charm is a charm, so naturally it has multiple uses. Granted, you'll probably just use it for its White Knight token mode, but being able to pump a creature or exile a fatty can come in handy. The sideboard is crazy awesome. For starters, we have a single Banisher Priest. This card is decent against the Mirror or any mid-range deck really. It also does some serious work against Master of Waves. We also have 1 Mistcutter Hydra. This is for Mono Blue Devotion. We good? The other 2 1-ofs in the sideboard are an additional Vitu-Ghazi Guildmage for control matchups and 1 Hunt the Hunter. Part of the same color Hoser cycle in Theros, this card is perfect for this type of deck. Generally speaking, tokens are more disposable than the actual creature cards your opponents are playing. So even if Hunt the Hunter lets you trade a token for something huge, in the end you come out better than the other guy. This comes in against anything that runs forests. Next we have a playset of Unflinching Courage. It's clear this deck doesn't like mono red. Unflinching Courage is one of the best hard counters against that strategy, and if you can untap with it on a creature, it's going to be really tough for that mono red deck to outrace your potential life gain. 2 Pit Fight is an interesting addition. Instant speed fighting is quite powerful, so I would assume it would be used to attack mana producers or smaller devotion-based creatures you just don't want on the field anymore. Remember, Master of Waves is pretty small by himself. Druid's Deliverance is in the sideboard as a 3-of, and for good reason. Green aggro decks are powerful right now, and they bash in hard. On the off chance you're having a slow start or don't want to trade your early creatures away, the Deliverance gives you a free turn and another token. That's really strong for a common. The last card in the sideboard is Glare of Heresy. A pair of these comes in against junk midrange or any form of control. Detention Spheres and Elspeth can be really annoying to deal with. Glare of Heresy embarrasses them in front of all of their friends. It's brutal. Overall, this deck does what token decks do best. They flood the board as fast as possible and deal massive damage. The only real difference between this strategy and token decks we've seen in the past is that these tokens are much bigger and we have stronger protection against board wipe. Rootborn Defenses is a real problem for control decks as they will have to tap out to cast Supreme Verdict, leaving them unable to counter the Rootborn that follows. This token deck is big. If you're playing against a strategy like this, remember that it will move a little slow in the beginning, but you don't have too much time. Right around turn 4 or 5, you get into the part of the game where they can drop an instant Advent of the Wurm on you, and that's bad. Fighting against this type of deck is going to take fast aggression if you're playing blue, red, or green devotion strategies. If you let the board sit too long, the tokens and populate effects will outpace you. Black Devotion has a shot at late game, but only because Grey Merchant chunks for a ton. Even then, beware the deck's life gain. Outside of Devotion decks, I think this token deck has a pretty favorable matchup against blue-white control game 1. Detention Sphere and Supreme Verdict won't be reliable enough to stem the attacks forever. Elspeth does make blockers, but a lot of the tokens in the deck have trample or flying. Against a control strategy that includes black, the matchup gets a little less favorable. Thoughtseize and spot removal can prevent your Advents and Voices from really taking off. Esper could outlast the token deck long enough to stabilize. Midrange decks are probably an even matchup depending on the colors being played. If a midrange strategy wants to match this token deck creature for creature, it will never catch up. Populate effectively creates infinite creatures, allowing the token player to inevitably overrun the midrange player. On the other hand, the quality of the midrange player's creatures will be higher. Besides the Scion's birds, there aren't many ways for the token deck to handle Desecration Demon. It's a rough card. If you're playing against this deck, Lifebane Zombies are your best friends. This card will make a huge resurgence if this deck becomes a thing. So much value there. In addition, anything that removes a creature from the board is super relevant. Chain to the Rocks, Detention Sphere, even unsummon effects, all good. Anything that removes tokens from the battlefield in any way is very good here. Obvious inclusions against this strategy are board sweepers, the most important of which being Ratchet Bomb. Granted, they have multiple ways to protect against it, but it's still a 2-mana board wipe a lot of the time, and there's no way you can say no to that. At the end of the day, green-white tokens is another aggro token machine. It pumps out gigantic creatures and hopes it can maintain board position long enough to smash your face in. This deck looks insanely fun to play, and I hope it becomes more popular. It's always nice to give Devotion a run for its money. As always, subscribe below for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.